Oh, captain, my captain. Nico Hischier scored his second career hat trick, and after being shut out against the Jets, the Devils bounced back against the Wild. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. That's what I'm talking about. The New Jersey Devils defeated the Minnesota Wild by a score of 5-2. In the first segment of today's episode, I will share my main takeaways from the game. Then in the second segment, I will list some players that caught my eye and also name my personal 3 stars of the game. And then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game or recap episode, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. Now, before I talk about the game against the Wild, let's go back a few days, shall we? The Devils were in Winnipeg to take on the Jets, and they got shut out 4-0. Luke Hughes did not play in that game due to precautionary reasons. Apparently, he's dealing with a groin injury. He was a game-time decision against the Wild. Devils are already shorthanded. The Jets are one of the best teams in the NHL record-wise. They're competing with the Capitals for the President's Trophy. Going into the game against the Devils, they had only lost 5 games at home this year. It would have taken a miracle for the Devils to beat the Jets. And within the first few minutes of the game, you knew that the Devils were not going to win that matchup. Everybody was talking about on social media saying that they turned the game off after the Devils let in 2 early goals, because I don't think the Jets were going to blow that 2-0 lead. And the 2 goals that they scored later on in the game, just insult to injury. So I was curious to see how the Devils would respond against the Wild. It's the second half of a back-to-back. Fatigue plays a factor. Travel plays a factor. We're late in the season. Nobody's at 100%, as proven with Luke Hughes. I got to give a lot of credit to Sheldon Keefe and his coaching staff for rallying the troops. I've said it before. The next few games for the Devils, the game against the Blackhawks, then Jets, and now the home-and-home series with the Wild, these are going to be big games for them because they needed to win against the Blackhawks. They couldn't fall into that trap game. The Jets, I had little to no hope. The Wild, I was a little mixed because the Wild are still a playoff team. At the time of this recording, they are first in the Western wild card race. However, the St. Louis Blues are the hottest team in the NHL right now. Winners of 9 straight games. They are now tied with Minnesota for the top wild card spot. And I don't think it's going to take too long for the Blues to dethrone them. The point I'm just trying to make is that the Wild are still a playoff team. I know they've been a little inconsistent in their last few outings, but to their credit, they are playing without a few key players, including Kirill Kaprizov. He hasn't played in a minute, and Joel Eriksson Ek on the IR as well. Wild, similar to the Devils, shorthanded, trying to secure themselves a playoff spot out west. I don't underestimate the competition because no win is certain. I said it against the Blackhawks. I was confident that the Devils could beat Chicago, but I wasn't certain because there's a lot of parity in hockey. But I'm glad that the Devils came away with the win, and now their playoff odds, according to Money Puck, 99.3%. The magic number is down to 10. The Devils are inching closer to punching their ticket to the playoffs. In fact, can I change that phrase up a little bit? They are close to scanning their ticket to the playoffs, because are any arenas still doing physical tickets? Isn't it just like on your phone now? I know they do that at the Prudential Center, but anyway, getting way off topic. My overall thoughts on the game for the Devils is that they got off to a very great start. And this goes back to my point of Sheldon Keefe rallying the troops, because I needed to see a strong response from the Devils, and that's exactly what they did within the first 30 seconds of the game. Jesper, Bratt, and Nico Hischier, they did what they do best. They got off and running, and Nico Hischier scored the first goal of the game for the Devils. Similar to what happened against the Jets, in which the Jets, they asserted themselves early, and you knew that they were going to win the game. And I had a good feeling that the Devils were going to take the lead and not look back. A few minutes later, Paul Cotter, great shot from him to make it a 2-0 game. Paul Cotter has been underrated for the Devils, if you ask me, because he recently broke a Devils record. I'll talk more about that in the second segment, but 16 goals this season for Paul Cotter. That's actually not bad for a bottom six player. Now, Marcus Foligno did cut the lead in half, but it did take a weird bounce in front of Jacob Markstrom, so I don't really blame him all that much. You are more than free to disagree with me, but that's just my personal perspective. The Devils got off to a very great start. In the second period, there was no scoring, but the Devils proved to me that they are a playoff team. Let me make something perfectly clear. They are a playoff team, not a contending team. There's a difference. That second period was very entertaining. We saw a lot of physicality. We saw both teams create chances for one another, and the Devils were able to keep the Wild at bay to hold on to their 2-1 lead going into the third period. I'll get to the third period momentarily, but I was rather impressed from the Devils in the second, because they were playing strong. And you wouldn't have guessed that they were playing the back end of a back-to-back. You saw Jonathan Kovacevic. He got into it with Foligno. Both of them were given fighting majors. I don't know how you give Kovacevic 2 penalties in that. So a minor for unsportsmanlike conduct, and then obviously the fighting major. But Foligno only gets a fighting major. That left me a little puzzled. And I think a lot of people on social media were also puzzled by that. But I love the physicality. I'm not really going to fault Kovacevic for that. But I will say this. Kovacevic is generating a lot more penalties recently. And this goes back to Sheldon Keefe's infamous press conference where he said that Kovacevic needs to play better and that would help. I'm just saying, but let's focus on the positives. The second period proved to me that the Devils are more than capable of holding their own in the playoffs. I still don't believe they're going to go far once they do secure themselves a spot in the playoffs, because going up against the Carolina Hurricanes, not having home ice advantage, that's going to be a tough chore for them, because if the season were to end today, they would be playing the Hurricanes in the first round, but that's way down the line. Nico Hischier, hat trick in this game, phenomenal. His line was buzzing all game long. Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Stefan Nason. Great work from those three. The Timo Meier line was also buzzing. I'm loving this new and improved Timo Meier, and I think it's because he's playing his natural position and he's being given a bigger chance, so he's more of a focal point. I guess this is one of the bright sides of Jack Hughes being injured. Let me just make this perfectly clear. I'm not saying I'm happy that Jack Hughes is injured. The Devils still need him. But if I have to look at it in a positive manner, Timo Meier has unlocked something that we haven't seen in a good while. 7 games remaining this season. 6 of them will be played at the Rock. That really helps the Devils. But the biggest thing I want to highlight about the Devils is that they're doing very good on the power play. But let me put this into perspective. courtesy of my colleague, Alex Chavancy, who's the host of Devils on the Rush podcast. He put this out and said that Jeremy Colleton remains an unsung hero for the Devils. Since Jack Hughes' injury, the Devils are 11 for 33 on the power play, 33.3%. Don't forget, no Dougie either. Dougie Hamilton creates good looks out in front for his team because he has one of the best slap shots in the league. Jack Hughes is the engine that makes the Devils run, and yet they're still doing rather well for themselves on the man advantage. This game was entertaining. I saw the Devils get off to a good start. They played strong in the second. Physicality, defense was a point of emphasis. The referees let the players play. I'm not going to complain about that. And the Devils put their foot on the gas pedal in the third period, led by Nico Hischier, who once again had a hat trick. Nico Hischier got an early goal in the third period. Then Ryan Hartman scored a few minutes later to cut the lead to 1 once again. It was a funny play. Like, the Wild unleashed a shot and it hit the crossbar, and I thought it was a goal at first, but then the referees waved it off, and then there was like bedlam on Markstrom's blue paint, and I guess Hartman just batted it on in, but shouldn't that be goalie interference? I don't know. That rule is so blurry, but it was just strange. So I don't really blame Markstrom for that one either. And Markstrom had a really good game, so I'm not really going to complain about him. But Nico Hischier, about 10 minutes later, scoring on the power play to give the Devils a 2-goal lead once again. And the power play continues to be strong. Tomas Tatar, Tuna, is coming alive once again for the Devils. Andre Palat got an assist on it. Shout out to him. This game was just incredible to watch. And I'm very proud of the Devils for responding in such a dominant fashion, especially after the disappointing loss to the Jets. Okay, I'm going to name some players that caught my eye momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. My bracket has already been busted. Thanks a lot, Cooper Flag and Duke. I had Alabama winning it all. I had a 99% bracket. Oh, that's gonna give me nightmares for a good minute. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, before I name my personal 3 stars of the game, first, some honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1 goes to Paul Cotter, who scored a goal in the first period. But I don't want to focus on Paul Cotter's scoring. I want to focus on his hits because I don't think this is being talked about enough. Paul Cotter has 231 hits last time I checked on Hockey Reference. That's a Devils record for most hits in a single season. Did you know who held the previous record? Blake Coleman with 225 during the 2018-2019 season. Paul Cotter broke a Devils record, yet nobody is talking about it. That's incredible, because if this game showed anything, Paul Cotter is capable of scoring, but he brings a lot of physicality. He's not a one-dimensional player. First season with the Devils, he's already in the record book. He's the record holder for most hits in a single season. That's incredible. Think about that. Timo Meier. March is winding down. Timo Meier isn't. His line was buzzing. Tomas Tatar, 2 points in 3 games. I'm impressed from Tuna. Still a far cry from what he did a couple of years ago, but I'm glad that he's getting hot at the right possible time. Stefan Nason. New career high in points. Nason surpassed his career high in goals a good while ago. but now he has a new career high in points, 38 points in 73 games played. I know Nason has sort of struggled the last few weeks, but he had an empty netter goal against the Blackhawks to break him out of his scoring funk a little bit. And then he got the secondary assist on Hischier's goal in the first period. So that means Nason has 2 points in his last 3 games. Like I said, Nason, last few weeks, bit of a struggle for him, but seems like he's starting to pick it up just a little bit. And I'm glad that he now has career highs in both his goals and points category. All right. My third star goes to Jesper Bratt. He picked up 2 assists in this game. Jesper Bratt continues to always find his name in the score sheet. He's always consistently good. And I'm always impressed with what he's capable of doing. He got the primary assist on Nico Hischier's goal in the first period, and he got the secondary assist on Nico Hischier's hat trick goal in the third. 5-on-5 power play. Jesper Bratt has really picked up the scoring for the Devils. And if you're curious, in 75 game appearances, Jesper Bratt has 86 points. This might be controversial, but I think we need to have a talk of Jesper Bratt becoming the first Devils player to eclipse 100 points. I know we've always talked about Jack Hughes possibly owning that title someday, but given how Jesper Bratt is always available, he's never injured, he continues to put up points, not this season, but definitely next season, we need to talk about Jesper Bratt becoming the first Devils player to possibly get 100 points. I think just based on the track history the last few years, I think you got to have that talk. I think Jesper Bratt might be the one to do it. Might be a hot take on my end, but that's just my 2-cent opinion. My second star has to go to Jacob Markstrom. He saw 24 shots, made 22 saves, giving him a save percentage in this game of .917. I think it's safe to say that ever since returning from injury, Jacob Markstrom has kind of struggled, and man, has it shown in a few of his outings. Now, I said it in the previous post-game recap episode that the game against the Blackhawks, it wasn't really his best outing. It was going to take some time for him to get readjusted. This game against the Wild, was it one of his better performances? No, but it was definitely an improvement. It's not like his outing against the Blackhawks was horrendous or anything. In fact, he saw a lot of shots in the third period. More than half of the Blackhawks shots were generated in the third period. Once again, it's always that one period in which the Devils just crash and burn. But focusing on this game, the Devils didn't have a period in which they collapsed. In fact, they never trailed in this game. And they never looked weaker than the Wild. It was a very competitive back and forth affair in a good way. Not in terms of scoring, just in terms of creating chances and having to come up big, especially in the second period. Every win down the stretch is vital for the Devils. So I had to give Jacob Markstrom my second star of the game just because of the improvement he showed against the Wild. And slowly but surely, he's turning his luck around. My first star, come on, was it ever a debate? Nico Hischier getting the hat trick. I talked about Paul Cotter setting a new hits record for the Devils. I talked about Stefan Nason getting a new career high in points and goals. But Nico Hischier, he also surpassed a career high. He now has 33 goals this season, which surpasses his career high from the 2022-2023 season, in which he had 31 goals. That's what I call leading by example. Devils needed to string together more wins consistently, winners of 2 of their last 3. I'll take it. And the magic number is down to 10. Devils have a 99.3% chance of making the playoffs. I like those odds if you ask me. And Nico Hischier getting the hat trick. It was just incredible to see. From start to finish, Nico was leading the way for the Devils. He got the party started in the first period, third period. 2 of the 3 goals were scored by him to put the game out of reach and give the Devils the 5-2 victory. So, oh, captain, my captain, you are my first star. All right, we're going to compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about 5-hour energy. Man, I love this so much. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling the lost hour of sleep, 5-hour energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-hour energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I actually use 5-hour energy quite frequently, especially on long car rides. I need just 2 things for a long car ride. 1, I need my podcast playlist. And 2, I need a 5-hour energy to give me that boost. Whether I'm driving 2 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 5-hour energy always helps me power through it. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-hour energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Okay, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. Shots on goal differential 33-24 in favor of the Devils. Remember how I said that the second period was pretty much back and forth between both these teams? Well, the Wild led the Devils in the shots category in the second, 12-11. And then the Devils dominated the Wild in the third, 12-5. There was not one particular period in which I was concerned for the Devils. They did a good job answering anything that the Wild threw at them. Power plays, Devils were 1 for 1 thanks to Hischier. Wild were 0 for 2. Hits 29-24 in favor of the Wild. Giveaways 11-7 in favor of the Devils. Takeaways 7-5 in favor of the Wild. Block shots 19-9 in favor of the Wild. Time spent in the penalty box 11-9. Okay. If I had to give the Devils a letter grade, honestly, I'm going to give them an A because they looked dominant from start to finish. The second period was very entertaining in terms of physicality, both teams exchanging blows with one another, and the Devils really did a good job of making sure that the Wild never recaptured any momentum. I think the Devils established themselves as a playoff team, and this game had a playoff atmosphere, and maybe this is what Kovacevic was talking about, having that playoff mentality. To close out the season, most of the Devils games are going to be played at the Prudential Center, which I think will help them in more ways than one. This game was just great to see, and it was a great response. Credit to Sheldon Keefe, credit to the coaching staff, credit to the players, especially Nico Hischier. I was thoroughly entertained, and I was never concerned for Devils at any point. You might have a difference of opinion, but I'm comfortable with giving the Devils an A. Let me know your thoughts. What did you think of this matchup? Do you think the Devils have now established themselves as a playoff team? Not contenders, a playoff team. They have a 99.3% chance of locking themselves into the Stanley Cup Playoffs. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast streaming service. Hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.